Good. Yes, it's good to see um, present faces and the interested people. I'm hoping that I get to meet you. In the meantime, let me try to tell you a few things about the EGS. You probably know from the announcements that I function as the dean of the PACT Division, Philosophy, Art, and Critical Thought. I'm president of the university, and so my titles are shifting, but I remain in the same position with respect to philosophy, art, and critical thought. I teach there. I'm very active in dealing with the faculty, and so I'm perhaps the most appropriate person to do this presentation. However, I'm backed up. Excuse me. I want to let you know that I'm backed up by the new director of the program. That's Nemanja Mitrovic, who's in the background doing the technical support. But he is present and prepared to come in at any point. So we have basically the same structure we've had over years. Just titles have changed a little bit. The ambition today is to pass on some insights into how the EGS functions. It's a distinctive institution in many ways. It has a long history, 25 years. We've been actually 26 years since what is now the PACT Division has been in operation. So there's quite a history and a legacy and a tradition. But it's a very singular institution, and I think that well, actually, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to speak to you and pass on some of my views of what makes it distinctive, and also pass on some details about its concrete functioning. So I welcome all of you. Thank you for joining us. If there are things that are unclear, we're going to post this on YouTube, so you will have an opportunity to look back at anything you might want. But I'm going to try to be as clear as I can. I want to start out by speaking to the structure of the institution, how study proceeds, and I'll just be reviewing some basic elements. And then I'll try to say a few more words about what I think what truly makes us distinctive. And for that, I've prepared some notes. I may do some reading from those notes and a mixture of that and improvisation. I try to make this as casual as I can, but at the same time, I want to be sure I cover things and thereby set the ground for any questions you might have. And I do want to take questions. I'll take questions. We have mostly new or prospective students here, and I want to take questions from those of you who are in that position. I don't. This is not the occasion to discuss matters with longer standing students. I think this is really for people who would like to learn about the EGS and who might need some concrete information as they think about studying with us. So I want to then start with a few pretty straightforward items about structure. And I have to say, I think that one of our difficulties may be that the structure is so simple that it seems a little confusing. The people will look at this and they say, I must not understand something. There must be something I'm missing. But it really is very, very simple. And what it entails is sort of mirroring structures for the MA and PhD programs. We have two of these programs, two tracks of MA and PhD. One is called Philosophy, Art, and Social Thought. The other is called Literary, Musical, and Visual Thought. And I'll come back to these two programs, what makes them different. But we have two programs, and at both the MA and PhD levels, we have the same structure of study, essentially. And in both programs, again, it's the same structure. And I think the simplicity of that structure is what can be confusing. So at the MA level, and again, we have two tracks: Philosophy, Art, and Social Thought, Literary, Musical, and Visual Thought. But the MA degrees and the PhD degrees in both programs are the same in structure. And in fact, they overlap fundamentally. So at the MA level, students are required to take 12 courses. And we call these seminars as opposed to courses. So in that, we're using the nomenclature of North American institutions, basically. And I'll come back to this, but these courses, these seminars, are sort of follow the model of the North American graduate seminar. That's what has guided us over the years in defining the structure of our program. And that, and also the European public seminars of some of the really important intellectuals of the last 5 or 6 decades. And I'm going to speak to you about my experience with one of those. But I'm thinking of the seminars of people like Derrida or Foucault or Deleuze or Barthes, a whole series, Lacan. Each of these distinguished intellectuals gave public seminars. And the model for the EGS has been a little bit along the lines of those seminars. In other words, they should be they should be presented by very distinguished people who can communicate their thinking in a compelling but also a strong way. And so at the EGS, then we have 12 of those at the MA level, and the student normally takes 6 seminars in each of 2 years. That's the normal progress. There is some room for flexibility, but in a normal course of study, we will ask students to choose 6 seminars out of approximately 14 that we offer in the course of the year. You can choose 6, and these can be taken either in person in our sites and where we have in-person sessions, and those are in Saas-Fee, Switzerland, and Valletta, Malta. Our Swiss session starts at the end of July. Our Maltese session starts in October. So we invite students to join us, to join our community on those occasions in those sessions, if it's possible for them to do so. That really is the premium experience at the EGS, because you are in close proximity with the professors, having meals with them, walking up and back and forth to the campus site with them, and interacting with them in seminars. That's sort of the premium experience, but not everyone can do that, either for reasons of financial reasons or temporal constraints. And so it's possible to attend our sessions online, our courses. And all of these courses are streamed online. And I have to say that this has been very successful for us, these online connections. This came about during COVID. We were obliged to go online. And I would have to say, as like a traditional humanist, was saying, oh, this is awful. This isn't the way it should be, et cetera, et cetera. And then I discovered it was actually pretty good, and it was affording all kinds of opportunities. And so we have built this into our system. And having learned a lot from the COVID experience, we know how to do this without having a professional studio, but nevertheless with the various means that Zoom and Google give us. And it's actually quite sophisticated stuff at this point. So you will take normally 6 courses a year for 2 years from either of those sessions. And I want to emphasize that this structure is very purposefully designed as an intensive structure. And I'm speaking academically there. It's intensive, and these are intensive meetings in the sense that we pack a very great deal of instruction into a short period of time. Now, this creates actually a very special community in the meeting sites where we come together. It's quite intense not just in time-wise, but also in the engagement. And people really enjoy this, actually, the kind of community that forms in this context. But the intensive structure also, it makes it possible for people to join us who have other obligations in the year. People who may have professional obligations, may have other study obligations, or perhaps can't, just cannot take up a program in a traditional university that takes 9 months of residence, or sometimes less, but requires a massive investment in time and location, and where one is living. So this intensive structure, I think, gives students a tremendous flexibility. And I've been told by quite a few people, and I think this is the direction universities have to go. There has to be a greater flexibility in this sense. It also affords a situation that I'll be coming back to, and that is that we are able to have a lot of professionals in our group. And these are people who have studied philosophy, they're often deep into theory in various ways. They may be curators, they may be architects, sometimes they're lawyers or finance people, but they are somehow into the kind of work we do. And they join us for sessions or online. And I have to say they really enrich our programs. So the group that convenes in a session is not just academics on a traditional track of bachelor's degree, then master's degree, then PhD with an aim to becoming academic professionals. That's something you will find in a lot of the top universities in the various departments that work roughly in the areas that we touch upon. We have students like that, and they can be excellent students. But we also have a lot of others who are professionally involved. And I have to say that diversity really enriches the experience for everyone. The people who come from professional contexts have a form of experience which enriches the conversation in very interesting ways. So 6 courses per year for 2 years. And as I said, there's quite a lot of choice available to you in that sense. These courses, I want to say, are not at an introductory level, and by that I mean that in many institutions you'll find that MA study entails a set of courses designed to help you get into the field. In other words, they concentrate on the basics of that particular field. And it really is how can I say, it's a model where the presupposition is that a student requires an introduction to the field and then learns the capacity to work more, how can I say, fluidly with the core concepts and to understand the important text. We don't work that way. And part of that is, part of the reason for that is that we're so cross-disciplinary. There's no way in the world to give the foundations, the basic foundations for all the fields that we are traversing. We don't even have a specific field. What we have is a structure whereby thinkers are traversing fields to try to address the topics that concern them. So it's not an introductory. The MA study is not conceived along lines of introducing people to a field and thereby the courses are not introductory courses. They're not at that lower level. Instead, we have MA students join immediately the highest level seminars, and this has been a very interesting experiment. It works really well, as a matter of fact. And again, I'm speaking from 25 years of experience in this institution, 20 years personally. I joined in 2000. Students do not complain about it being too difficult. I think there are a few cases over these 25 years that I can remember, but people don't come away complaining, "Oh, I couldn't handle that." And the reason for this, I think, is that the professors that we are bringing in are all extremely experienced. They tend to be senior professors. We have been bringing in younger people in the last couple of years a bit more frequently. But what I want to stress here is that they are very experienced in pedagogy. And that means that they know how to render what they are addressing in an accessible way. An accessible, and also I want to say a public way. And I say that because, again, the audience that they speak to it comes from many different fields. They know when they start their seminar and when they undertake their presentation They know that the people in front of them are not necessarily trained in those fields. And in fact, they're probably not trained in those fields. Right? And so that shapes the way in which they speak. Now, that doesn't mean they compromise. And this is one of the sort of interesting facts about the teaching at the EGS. The professors don't dumb down their work. What they do is present it in a way that I would say they translate it in ways that makes it more accessible. And this is, I suspect, I've written about this, and I talked about it quite a bit. I suspect this is why teaching at the EGS is so interesting for them. We have a curious phenomenon which we're very proud of, and that is that our professors come back year after year. They don't have contracts that oblige them to do this. Nothing obliges them. Most of them are making enough money that they don't need us. These are distinguished professors. And yet they are happy to join us year after year. And they will frequently speak of the great delight they experience in teaching in this context. That's what brought me in. In 2000, I came, and I was a bit frustrated with my situation in the State University of New York. And I was really taken with the experience. I had the freedom that I had to pursue questions, and then the kinds of exchanges I was having. It was really quite important for me. But there was a little period there where it was the most important part of the year for me. And I mean the 10 days I would spend in Saas-Fee. And it's because of that experience and what it has become over the years for me that I've agreed to do the administration, because I think it's really important that there be this kind of teaching. So it is a very singular kind of a teaching situation, where MA students are immediately in the thick of it and learning about the approaches of these professors. So there are 12 courses, and then in 2 years. And then, or seminars, I should say, to be consistent. And then students reach the stage of writing a thesis, an MA thesis. And that's basically a long research essay. It's roughly 50 pages. We have word counts. In fact, you'll see that on, we have guidelines for MA and PhD study, which are posted on the website. You can consult those and you'll see everything in detail. And there you'll see a word indication. But I think of the MA thesis as 50 to 70 pages, somewhere in that range. The only other obligation you have in the way of presenting work is that in the 12 courses, we ask for what we call assessment papers. And we're drawing that because from our accreditation, and I'll come back to the accreditation question, we have to do a certain amount of assessment of students' progress. But we sort of twist this by saying, this is your assessment of the course and its meaning for you. So we let you write about anything you want. How does this course relate to what interests you? What would you like to pursue in relation to this course? So you might want to return to a text and write about that. And this is just 5 to 7 pages. It really is not an exhausting exercise. And it's really designed for you. In other words, to profit in some way, to think back on what's happened in the seminar, to profit from it with reflection after the fact. Now, sadly, a lot of students wait a long time to complete these. We don't demand them immediately. And we don't demand them immediately because we can't get anybody to do it. And they're also, the intensive structure makes it really hard for people to turn out these assessment papers right away. So we say, okay, you can have some time, and then the procrastination starts. And then people write to us, like, can we have a recording of the course? Because I don't remember what was going on. And that's a sad problem for us. But really, if you do it immediately, then it will be a richer and easier experience. You can knock it off in one evening. If you wait 3 months, then it's going to be a burden and you'll be sighing. But in any case, what I want to underscore is that these are not graded papers. This is really for your benefit. And so that we can meet our requirements. But it's the freedom that we're giving you here is for you to profit from the experience. So the following the 12 seminars, and then you write the thesis. That thesis is done under supervision for a year normally. The normal progress is 3 years. However, I would say I should mention, and this might be something that interests you, a lot of students finish in 2 years. In other words, they will be working on their MA thesis in their second year already while they're still doing courses. And then they will finish it up immediately after the seminar study is over. So it's possible to do it in 2 years. That's common. 3 years is the established norm. 5 years is the maximum. So the structure, again, very simple. 2 years of seminar study, 1 year of thesis writing. And again, there's a bit of flexibility there. One question I want to, I paused over MA study, and I was trying to explain that these are not introductory courses, and it's not a matter of for example, approaching philosophy of language by first spending 2 months studying Saussure and linguistics or something like that. We don't work that way. Instead, we go right into the questioning. The questioning is, or the research. The research is presented in a way that fundamental questions and fundamental concepts are communicated, and then the student will have the means to grasp what's at stake in that course, what's going on in the research, how to proceed with that research on their own. And they will, at a certain point, they'll determine, well, I want to concentrate on this area, or I want to concentrate on that area. And then we expect them to go study, say, Saussure and linguistics, and to get those things nailed down. But for the kinds of seminars that we're undertaking, you don't need that preparation. And it's something that you can then obtain on your own or in study groups. We have study groups that go along through the year. So at the MA level, there is this, I think, very effective way of drawing students immediately into the question. At the PhD level, a different question might come to your mind, and I think that question is, why do I need to take 12 seminars when I reach the PhD level? In Europe, that's not very common. Particularly, I spent 10 years studying in the UK, and in the UK, you do a couple methodologies courses, or I don't know, maybe another introductory course to PhD study and research methods. And then you're paired with an advisor, and you undertake your research for the PhD. Now, the difficulty with that structure, and again, I experienced it for 10 years, and I was very frustrated. The difficulty with that structure is that the student has to meet the expectations of an individual. And this inevitably narrows their framework. It narrows it quite dramatically. And this is already in a structure that is rather narrow in its construction, because in the UK, disciplines are very firmly defined, for the most part. There are exceptions. If you go to Goldsmiths or Kingston in London, which is now being closed by the government. Actually, the kinds of programs I'm searching for in my mind right now, like Goldsmiths, are getting more and more rare. But for the most part, academic disciplines in the UK are very narrow. And this is true throughout the world. For the most part, a discipline is a narrow construction of the field of knowledge and thought. It takes a particular object and a particular approach, and then it constructs an entire culture around this methodology. We are working very differently in a cross-disciplinary method, or cross-disciplinary approach. And so the kind of ongoing study becomes really very valuable. I need to add a little bit to what I was saying. When I was teaching in the UK, I noticed something rather intriguing. I created something called the Center for Modern Thought, and we would have seminars each semester for which I would talk with the other students and find out what they're interested in and so forth. But I would designate a topic and say, okay, we're going to study this together in the coming semester. Now, we would have maybe, I don't know, between 5 and a dozen people or 16, depending on the occasion, present. And few of those people would actually be working in the area that we were taking as our topic. But what I noticed was that every time this had a profound impact on the people who were not working in that area. It shaped their thinking. It enriched their thinking. It inspired them. And I became aware of the fact that this kind of, how could I say, aligned thinking, which was always theoretically strong, posing questions in fundamental ways. This aligned thinking was inspiring for people, even if they were not in the field at all. So I took that, with me in thinking about what we were doing at EGS. I inherited the structure of EGS, but it was my job at a certain point to start to theorize what was actually going on, and to decide, is this really the best structure? Is this working? Is it the way we should be functioning? And I came to the conclusion, actually, that it is quite unique and important, precisely because of this cross-disciplinary and character and the sustained character of questioning. So if you are sitting alone in a cold Scottish town like I was, and writing a thesis with a single individual, you're going to have a narrow construction. If you are working in a community where there's constant questioning going on, sustained questioning going on, then you will be aided in your writing experience. I saw this over and over again. I believe it very strongly. So I think, because it's cross-disciplinary, it requires a great deal of, it requires a considerable breadth and dexterity in approaching different topics. Because it's cross-disciplinary, and because it's for writing something as intense as PhD thesis, it's very important to have inspiration around you in the community in which you're working. And so I think that sustained study is invaluable. That goes on in North America. In North America, at least back from the time I was there, I haven't been teaching in North America for 20 years now, but students took graduate seminars throughout their study, and that includes when they're doing PhDs. PhD students are expected to show up at least in the seminars conducted by their advisors, but usually others. And in Europe, of course, as I was studying, I also experienced this kind of exposure to other discourses. So every student I knew was attending the seminar of some significant thinker. For me, it was Derrida. Others were going to hear Deleuze or Foucault or Lacan, or they all did this, whatever they were doing. And this had a very profound impact on their basically on their intellectual culture and their relation to their own work. So that's what I want to see sustained, if possible, and I want to offer that to people who are doing PhD work. I wanted to add one thing, but it's kind of slipping from me. I want to give you an example. I'm going to tell a story, and then I'll come on to a bit more about our faculty. This idea of a seminar that can serve a wide range of people and inspire them. I had this experience back in 1976. I started graduate study at the University of California, Irvine in 1974, 75. I felt within 2 years that I'd exhausted what was being offered there. I don't want to say it more severely, but anyway, I needed something else. And so I went to Paris to work with Derrida. And I didn't know what to expect in that seminar. but as it turned out, I entered a space where people from at every level were present. Younger students at master's and PhD levels, professors, visitors of all kinds. I was studying next to Sarah Kaufman and Sylviane Agacinski. You may recognize these names from the background. I mean, they were sitting right near me, and I was an MA student. At the beginning of that, I can't resist telling the story. At the beginning of that seminar, this is 1975, 76, Derrida did something that, which at the time I had no idea was a regular occurrence. But he started off the seminar and said, all right, this year, I'm tired of my doing all the work. You have to participate. So I want contributions of presentations. You know, it's just not fair that I should have to do this all, and it's not right. You know, we need this to be a proper seminar. So he said, okay, who's going to volunteer? Again, I've got people sitting near me who are famous, and then a lot of good students, and I'm sitting next to another American young man, and nobody's raising their hands. So I lean over to this other American. I want you to understand, this is monumental naivete I'm describing this. I leaned over and I said, maybe we should help him. Let's offer to do something. So I raised my hand, and we chatted for a moment, and I said, let's do something on Nietzsche. He said, okay. So I raised my hand and I said, Michael and I would be happy to do something, to prepare something on Nietzsche. And at that point, Derrida had this big smile. And he said, now, you see, there's at least someone who's willing to do this. And then the hands started going up. And then the really experienced people were raising their hands. Now, I devoted the entire year to preparing that presentation. It was on Heidegger's book on Nietzsche. It turned out to be career defining for me. As you know, I've written a lot on Heidegger, you may know. It was career defining. It gave me an incredible education in philosophy, because Heidegger's Nietzsche book, it reviews the history of metaphysics in the most exhaustive way that you can possibly get in 2 volumes. And honestly, I was scared to death, but I did a presentation in the spring. I followed Derrida's best student, PhD student, whom I saw destroyed by Derrida's responses. You can imagine how scared I was. This is actually in the traditional structure from those days. That's called descendre l'étudiant, to bring them down a notch. And then I came up and gave my Nietzsche, and I got praise. You know. Now, again, I was a totally unknown MA student who could barely speak French at the beginning of the year. And I was welcomed. And at the end, I was able to participate and contribute. And I met incredible people along the way who remained friends for years after. And I actually contributed to that seminar. Right? So I find that it was wonderful for me, an incredible experience for me. But it also points to what is possible in a seminar situation, right? At EGS, MA and PhD students are perfectly comfortable with each other. And in fact, I think they both enjoy having each other there. That's been my sense. So there's a really special community that is very welcoming, supportive, and yeah, and I think that that always takes benefit from the high quality of the seminars that are being offered, and again, by people of very great distinction. So that's pretty much what I have to say about PhD and MA study at the EGS. I had actually pursued in some notes, some thoughts about cross-disciplinary study, and I think I want to just speak to one thing. Actually, the framework for these notes that I prepared, and I'll just speak extemporaneously about this. The framework was that I tend not to think of the PACT division of the EGS as functioning like an academic department. It's really not a department at all. I think it's something closer, and the phrase I like to use is an intellectual society. And that's an unfortunate phrase because it immediately calls up stuff from the 19th century with a rather stuffy context in Paris or London, but or 18th century. But in the word society and in the idea that there should be a kind of relation among the participants that is devoted to knowledge and in some sense free of bureaucratic interference, I think that captures something of what we're doing. You might say, well, maybe it's more of a research center than an intellectual society. Okay, but it's a research center in which there is degree granting, and where the orientation is pedagogical. So, in other words, we are presenting research at the EGS, but we're doing that in seminars. And so this is, and we're doing in seminars, not just in the sense that the professors do their stuff on the outside and then come in and read texts or report on what they've done. Rather, they're doing the research with you. And that makes it, so I call it, instead of research-led teaching, which is the Humboldtian phrase that's prominent throughout the EU, I call it teaching-led research. And I think that this is where, because it is research, and other professors are very interested in what the other professors are doing. So there is a community of research going on, taking shape, taking form. Now, I did want to say something about what they're doing. Most of these faculty, I'd say virtually all of them, I would say, they're people who've achieved very distinctive voices and places in the world of research. And because they have these voices and a comfort with what they're doing, they're really able to communicate what they're doing in terms that are accessible for people who are not necessarily experts in that field. At the same time, they are people who try to make their work pertinent to what's going on in the world and to contemporary issues. They're involved in contemporary thought. They're looking at what's happening in the world of thought, and they are intervening. But they're also trying to do that always with an eye to the socio-political situation, the historical conditions in which they're working. And so, I would say that there are people who, or we let them, actually, academic freedom is very important here. There are people who teach whatever they deem appropriate at the moment. And now that can be appropriate for themselves because of their teaching program, but also it is always inevitably appropriate to the moment in terms of our socio-political or historical situation. All of these professors maintain a keen eye on what's going on in the world. And this shapes what's going on in the seminars in a very interesting way, because they're pursuing their singular projects and presenting these, but you will notice in the course of a session that they start to dovetail in some ways. Some of this is I would say accidental in the sense that it's not planned at all, and they are they're going to approach whatever topic they're taking up, but they're also thinking, what does this mean at this moment, right? What is the meaning of this? And that's what creates this sort of orientation toward the more global general situation. And so you get this, you get what I was calling a dovetailing. I had at least 2 people come to me last year and they said, I was amazed at the continuity in these seminars. I didn't expect that at all. And I said, well, as I was saying a moment ago, it wasn't planned, but that's the way it works. And I think this is something very, very, very interesting and important. There's a lot of dialogue going on, and there's dialogue from seminar to seminar. And this helps shape this continuity. Now, it's always cross-disciplinary, and I think that this is partly a function of these traits that I described in the faculty. They are people who occupy public positions, and they are people who are attentive to the public, to the global situation. And then, so there are people who will ask each time that they are presenting an issue, they'll say, what is the meaning of this research for our context, for the issues of our time? All of our professors do this. And when they do it, they are immediately obliged to undertake some form of cross-disciplinary thinking, some traversal of discipline. Because if they want to think about the general import of their work, they cannot avoid thinking about other forms of inquiry, and they can't avoid engaging relevant philosophical and socio-political issues. A lot of my research in the past years has been devoted to the work of a literary thinker, Maurice Blanchot. And Blanchot introduces one of his major collections of essays. This is L'Entretien Infini from 1969. He introduces it with a statement about, the meaning of literary study as he understands it. And he actually challenges the word literature at a certain point. But he introduces it by saying that all of the thinking that guides him in this text is sort of propelled by a single question, which is, what does it mean that something like literature should exist? What is at stake in the fact that literature exists? Now, when you think about it, that's a question that obviously requires a very special relation to literature. If you're studying this as a research topic, you have to have a very profound grasp of the object and its history. But at the same time, if you're asking, what does it mean that this kind of thing should exist as a discursive mode, you have to ask questions about language, about the symbolic order within which literature functions, about the socio-political organization, the formation of that symbolic order. You have to ask about the experience to which this literary form answers, and that's first of all the author's experience. That takes us into questions relating to psychoanalysis or other topics of the human relation to language and so forth. So someone who was asking a question about the meaning of what they're doing has to pursue a cross-disciplinary project. And that's what we see in our professors, who are doing this in their singular ways, always, but even as a singular project, even as they pursue a singular project, are necessarily opening onto a broader context. And these people are interested in seeing how others are doing it, right? Learning from others. So, you might ask yourself, how do the faculty at EGS get chosen? The answer is that they themselves suggest, we really should get so-and-so. And they're not getting so-and-so because it's a friend, or we try to keep that from happening. They want that person because they're interested in the work that they're undertaking. And they may be coming from literature or finance or political theory or art or theory of art, whatever. But there's something about the way they're approaching their topics which speaks to the people who are already there, and that's how the community grows. They say, let's bring this person. I hear they're really good, or I really like their last book, or whatever. And if I get that kind of suggestion, I'll speak to a number of people. Say, what do you think? Do you know anything about this person, and so forth? If I don't know myself, and after I've gathered necessary information, we'll issue an invitation and we'll try them out. A lot of our newer professors came for a year. We said, great, we'll carry on. And then they become regular professors. So that's essentially how it works. And that's what makes it, again, an intellectual society, because there's a kind of community at work here. It's not a bureaucratically functioning choice of professors. We have a structure that allows us tremendous flexibility. And I have to tell you, we're fighting to keep that possible, because in the world of EU accreditation, there are some strictures, but it is possible for us to justify the structure that I have been describing and to secure that accreditation. So we're solid in that respect. And I might add that we have the EU accreditation, which undoubtedly you know about, which comes from Malta. We're also in the process of securing a second accreditation with the New England Commission for Higher Education, which is the most preeminent, most established commission in North America. They cover little institutions like Harvard and MIT and Tufts and so on and so forth. So they have very high standards, but they're also very capable, and it's wonderful to work with them. So this summer we will have a site visit in August. You'll see me disappear and speaking to people you don't recognize for the second of three-stage process, a long process, but we're coming into the stage where we, if we're successful, become candidates for accreditation, and then we have to prove ourselves over a few years in relation to what we've said about ourselves, and then we can receive that new accreditation. But that's a quite distinguished body, the NECHE, and what they are having us do and what they call self-study and self-representation is incredibly helpful in terms of our structure, our procedures, and so forth. But we try to keep all that stuff out of your what should I say, out of your hair, out of your concern. You know, we foreground the teaching experience, and these how can I say, these bureaucratic obligations are not your problem. But I do want you to know that this stuff is going on in the background and being taken care of effectively. Just one thing I realized I didn't add. That has to do with the relation between the two degree programs. The PACT program and the that's sort of a joke. That's a Blanchotian joke. Philosophy, art, and social thought, and then excuse me, the other program is literary, musical, and visual thought. These are two sister programs. It's possible to take the same courses for each of the programs. We are in the process of trying to transform LMVT in order to allow for more practice-based work or arts-related courses to come in to be used. That will come next year. The reason we have these two degrees is that a number of our students were working in the arts, and they were concerned at the time. This is actually some time ago, starting in a period when we were still called Media and Communications, and then when we changed our name, Philosophy, Art, and Critical Thought. Students were still a little bit uneasy about whether they, as artists, would be able to use this in the arts, in arts-related fields. Would this really show the fact that they have been studying art? And so we created this degree program because art really is critical to our work. We created it so that students would be able to show the credentials. In case they were doing museum creation, curation, or some related field. And some students prefer that their degrees should say this. We have artists who are perfectly happy with philosophy, art, and social thought. So it was, it was a small gesture, but we really would like to develop the distinction between the two programs as we go forward. We'd like to bring more art into the literary, musical, and visual thought track. We started to do that this year, actually. We had a session in London, which concluded 2 weeks ago. There were 3 seminars underway devoted to the topic of philosophy and music. 3 excellent seminars. Unfortunately, not many people took up that offer. I think maybe we didn't communicate it enough. Maybe it was too new and so forth. But we're going to continue along those lines, trying to develop the arts component. And music is very important for us for various reasons. But also film. Film has always been a big dimension of our program. Literature has been very important. So the arts are key to what we're trying to do. And at the same time, we think we need to develop that a bit further. So with that, I think I've covered everything that I meant to cover. And so Nemanja is still answering questions. Good. Well, why don't I call this call an end to this. You can always contact Pneumonia or I with questions. We're more than happy to address these. The recommended date for applications is actually coming up very shortly, July 1st, but we can accept applications up to the 15th for SASFE. So, but we need you to go through the slide room application portal to do this. And the one thing I want to urge you with regard to the slide room application process, please don't over worry this these set of questions that we pose there. We're trying to get a sense of your turn of mind and what brings you to us, what interests you, and then something of your background. So please don't worry about making this a highly polished document and getting it to what you imagine to be a high level. Just try to show us who you are, and that should not take a long time, really. So there's time remaining to get in those applications. You can also apply if you want to go to Malta after, I think the deadline, the recommended deadline is September 1st, but we also allow some extra time there. So, but again, I've spoken to a couple of people who said, well, I just don't feel like my application is quite ready. And I said, oh, please, send it in. let's see what you've got. And we can always have a conversation to follow up on that. So I think with that, we can close. And I want to thank you for your patience. And again, invite any further questions you might have. I hope we see you soon in one way or another. And I wish you all the best in what I hope is a beautiful summer wherever you are. And of course, in times that are very trying and exhausting. And I guess I would add, I think the EGS is a good place to be thinking together with others in such times. But with that, let me thank you once again and draw this to a close. Thank you very much. Take care, all of you.